Hey, everybody. So I was talking to some musicians recently who play in bands, and I was learning that a lot of them use Ableton Live to for backing tracks, or maybe for cues that they hear in their in-ear monitors, or maybe for some MIDI that plays along with them while they play. And so very often they'll set up the timeline with each song at a specific spot on the timeline, and then they need a way to be able to jump to the spot on the timeline that they want the playhead to go to. And there's a popular tool out there that a lot of them use that is, from what I understand, very powerful, but also very expensive. And I have not really used any tool like this or even looked very much at one, but I was kind of just curious about just the challenge of building something like this, particularly something that's simple that could also be free. Because this other tool is like more than $100, and I was thinking, well, it'd be cool just if there was a simple one out there for people that can't spend $100 on a tool like that. So what I was thinking I'd do today is just build a really, really basic version live here. And if you want to see this tool develop, then maybe we can do that, given your feedback down in the comments below. If this video is up, then the device exists and you can get it down below. And if you want to hang around and actually watch the process of building it, then stick around. So let's dive in. So I'm going to do a max audio effect. This isn't really going to process any audio at all. All it's going to do is give us a way to interact with the Live API. And I am going to do that in JavaScript. So I'm going to create a v8.codebox. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little better. Maybe 125%. Okay. So what we'll need to do is create an observer, which is just a mechanism that constantly watches some property of our live set and informs us if there are any changes. And what we're specifically looking to observe are these cue points. And I already have a few of them here, and we'll do some tests where we add some new ones. So if I go into my browser and I go to the song, we can see that it has this child that's called cue points, and that's observable. So what we'll do in the code is we'll start with a variable called cue point observer, and we're going to set this to null to begin. Because we can't create the observer in the global scope here, we have to tell it to get created after the Max for Live device has initialized. And we'll know that has happened when we get a bang from live.this device. So what I'll do is I'll create a function called init, and I will send that as a message into this JavaScript object. So when init occurs, we're going to make cuePointObserver into a Live API instance, new Live API. And if we go back to the documentation and we go to the class for Live API, which is here, we can see that we can provide a callback, which is a function to be called when the Live API object refers to a new object in Live, or when an observed property changes, which is exactly what we want. We want to observe this cue points property of the song object. And by the way, I did a video a while ago about kind of the basics of the Live API, where I didn't spend any time in JavaScript. It was all just in patching, but gave a lot of the background information about what all this jargon I'm using is. So if you want to learn more about that, go watch that, because I won't explain a whole lot of that in this video. So we're going to supply a path, which is basically where we want to, what object within the Live object hierarchy we want to look at. And then we'll specify a property that we want to observe, which is cue points. And then we'll also create a function that gets called anytime that property changes. So let's create that function. So function cue point callback. And then we're going to get a list of IDs in response to that. And then inside the live API, the call to the live API constructor, we can say queue point callback, and then supply a path, which is just going to be live set. And then we'll also set the queue point observer property to queue points. So now let's just print what we get from the callback when we initialize here. Apparently nothing. So what did I do wrong? Let's just see, is this getting called at all post? It doesn't seem like it is. Queue point, I did this wrong. This is not a function, it's a property, so we have to set it like this. Property is a property. I find that when I make videos where I'm writing JavaScript code, I make a lot of very elementary errors because my brain is trying to do two things at once. Okay, great. So we got this hello, and then we get a list of IDs, queue points, ID3, ID4, ID5. We also get this IDs, ID2, which means that it's also returning to us, I think, the ID of live set in some cases. So what I think we want to do is create a conditional statement here that says if IDs 0, so the first element in IDs is not queue points, then just return and stop doing stuff. And then we can try printing after that. So this is just a way of basically ignoring when we get something like this. Let's test and see if that worked. Great. So now what we want to do is loop over this set of IDs. So we're going to say for let I equal 2, because we have queue points, ID, and then this. And what we really want is that number. I is less than IDs.length. I plus equals 2. So we're starting from position 3 and we're advancing every 2. And we'll say const CP, I guess, is equal to new live API. This syntax is always really annoying. You have to always put this symbol ID before the ID. So I believe that's correct, and we can just test. Let's try this. So we'll print the ID from the actual array and also from the live API, just to see if those match and we got this correct. So let's test. I has already been declared. Line 12. Where has I been declared? I need a semicolon here. See, like I said, a lot of elementary errors. I don't know why. Okay. Great, those match. So this is working. So now what we should be able to do is get the name. So if we say, if we go back to the docs and we go to queue point, because we're getting a list of queue points, which is a list of objects of the class queue point, and they have these two properties, name and title, or name and time, and a function which allows us to jump directly to that, which is super handy. And these properties that are properties of the class, I can query them using the get message. So get name and cp.get time. Got another error. which is, there we go. Cool. So there's the name and the times of each of these. And MapHive 6.1 is the whole name. So this is looking great. So what I think I'm going to do is create an object. So let cue points. And then each time that this gets called, we want to clear that. And speaking of clearing things, actually, one thing I like to do that I don't know if it's totally necessary, but I just think is smart and can sometimes prevent performance problems or weird crashes caused by your device, is to just make sure that you're clearing the computer's memory of any live API instances that you created. So what we can say is if QPointObserver is not null, meaning it is a live API instance, then we will clear its contents from memory, which we can do using this freePeer method. So if QPointObserver is not null, then free the memory. And this is something that's good to do. I always do it with Live API. So if I'm going to make a call to the Live API, when I'm done using it, I just free that memory. In this case, because we're observing, we want it to persist until we call init again and we replace it. But in cases where you're going to call it just one time, like down here, we'll use it where we're just going to call it, get some stuff from it, and then we're done with it. At the end, I always like to call this freePeer. And the same goes for dictionaries as well as for tasks. So there's a few different things in JavaScript in Max that, as a best practice, it's a good idea to kind of do your own garbage collection or cleanup of those objects in memory. Okay, so we cleared the cue points, and now let's store this stuff in there. So we'll say const name is equal to cp.getName, and time is time. And then cue points name is equal to name, time, and the ID also. So let's store that as a variable. Okay. That looks good, I think. And then at this point, we can clear that memory for the next. And then let's output this as a dictionary so that we can look at it, the cue points object. So I'm going to say const d equals new dict, d.parse json dot stringify cue points, and then outlet 0 dictionary d.name. So we're getting the name of the dictionary from d here, and we're just adding this symbol dictionary in the beginning because that's the convention in Max. And then again, we'll do d.freePeer because we don't need well, for now, let's leave that out, but I don't think we're going to need it. And then at the outlet, I'm going to put a route past dictionary just for hygiene's sake more than anything. And then we can do a dict.view. And hopefully, if I got that all right, there we go. Now this is interesting. This looks like it's an array right here. So let me use a dict.codebox so we can actually kind of look at this just in a less of a formatted format and just look at it as sort of raw JSON. Interesting. Cue point observers. Okay. Okay, yeah, these are arrays. So what we want to do is just get I don't know why it's returning an array in response to the get message, but it is. So we'll just get the first item in that array. So now that these are no longer arrays here, they're just, there's also a space at the end of this. I guess that's fine. Cool. And so we have all of those. So now, what I can do is create a new menu. And this is going to be a very simple device. We're not going to have any fancy drag and drop. All we're doing in this particular case is just making it possible for you to pick a cue in your in this menu and jump to the cue. That's it. And the menu stays populated with all of your cues. So if we get the dictionary, we'll use a TL clear here because we want to clear the menu. And then we'll use dict.iter, and this is going to give us a stream of messages that start with the key and then contain the dictionary. So we'll use zeal slice here, zeal slice 1. So if we test this out, you see we're getting a dictionary, and then we can say dict.unpack name. And let's see what that gives us. A string, string.to symbol. Okay. Now let's try that. There we go, a name. Beautiful. So now we can say prepend append. And we should now populate that menu. Great. Okay, so now all we need to do is call the jump method or the jump function of the cue point. And oh, by the way, I'm going to add this back and make sure that this actually works, which it does. So we free it from the sort of JavaScript memory, but the dictionary continues to exist. All right. So there's two ways that we could do this kind of jumping recall. We could either do it outside of this JavaScript by just using normal live API objects, or we could do it inside. I think I'm going to do it in the code. So we'll say jump $1 here. So that will then call a new function called jump. And cue name is the argument. And then we can look up the cue name in the cue points object here. Now, one thing to point out is if you're working in Max with structured data like this, and you really want to be able to access that data flexibly in as many places as possible within your patch, then you want to put it in a dictionary, which is kind of Max's like globally accessible form of structured data, which is structured like and looks like an object in JavaScript, but it's not the same thing. So what I'm going to do in this code is look up the cue point in the object that is just living saved inside of this JavaScript code. If I had multiple JavaScript scripts, or I had, sections of patching that needed to access this data, then I might prefer to kind of use the dictionary as the source of truth and look everything up there, because that thing is kind of globally accessible. But in this particular case, I'm pretty confident that this cue points object and this dictionary are going to remain in sync with one another, assuming the JavaScript code doesn't get recompiled, which it wouldn't in normal operation. So I'm just going to look it up in the cue points object because it's just easier code to write. So we'll say cue points cue name. So this is going to be the cue point at question. And then the ID is QPoint.id. And then the QPoint API, I guess we could say, is new live API. ID QPoint.id. So we don't really care too much about this. And then CP API dot call jump. So we're going to call this method jump. I hope that worked. Let's find out. So if we show the screen, I'll put this marker somewhere random. I will find my menu, which is way down on my right side of my screen. Sorry, and I'll select Pro Radii. Nope, we had a problem. So it failed to find, oh, it's probably, so this, I need to keep pressing init every time I edit the code. So let's try that now. Nope, didn't work. CP is not defined. CP, there's an erroneous dot in there. So I have to call init again. And the reason I have to do that is because I have to scan for I have to initialize this observer every time the code changes. So we're not at Pro Radii. Now we're Pro Radii. Yay, okay. Let me put this in presentation mode so that I'm not having to scroll around quite as much. And one thing that would be nice is that, like, maybe I can have a toggle that allows me to decide whether or not I want to start playing the transport when I jump to it. And let me just test these other ones before we do anything else. So that's totally working. And oh, also I want to see if I add a new one, is the menu going to get updated? So let's create a new locator. And then, okay. So when it created it immediately with the default name, and it didn't give it its actual name. So I think what I'm going to do is delay. This is kind of an interesting problem, because I don't know that it's possible to detect when I change the name of the cue point. I guess we could. A simple solution would be to just like wait 5 seconds, maybe. Maybe we can also add a scan button. So let's just do a live.text. Scan, which is a button, which is hidden from automation. So that will call init. So that's a way to just get it to, we can just kind of force it to fix itself. There we go. But I would also like to have a little bit of a better solution. And so this is where a task, so the best way that I can think to do it is like, just when you get this callback, wait 5 seconds before you actually do this whole process of collecting all the names. So let's go to the docs. And a task is the way that we can schedule something to happen in the future. So I think we can just have this sit on our global scope. So let cue point recheck equal new task, and then it's the function that's going to get called this during the execution of the function. I don't think we care about that. And arguments to pass to the function, which we do care about. So we'll say This is always tricky. I always like struggle with this one. Oh, task.schedule. But how do I get the arguments into it? I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but this is how I'm going to do it. So we'll set this to null. And we'll change the name of this function to like update cue points. I'm using capital P in other places. And then we'll have the cue point callback. And then we'll say if cue point recheck is not equal to null, then cue point recheck dot free peer. I didn't expect to like use all of the objects that require this kind of free peer stuff. It's particularly important with the tasks. So I'll show you here. Invalidate the task and make it available for garbage collection by the JS engine. So task objects persist beyond their code scope, right? Because if I call the schedule method of the task, it's basically scheduling something to happen however many milliseconds into the future. So if I call it in the context of this function, it continues to exist. Whereas normally in JavaScript, any variables that have local scope to that would just be discarded. So because we're going to rebuild this this task, I'm going to make sure I call the free peer method if one already exists. So then we'll say cue point recheck equals new task. And I'm curious if anybody like has more comfortable with this whole thing and knows how I don't have to rebuild it, but could just call it, scheduling it, but also passing in these IDs as an argument. I'm curious to know. So update cue points is what we're going to call. We're going to pass in this, which we don't care about, but it's fine. We could also just say null here because it doesn't matter. The context. This is just in cases where you need to say, where you're inside of a class, or you need to be able to access the JS this, as they call it. This is kind of more of a rarely used thing. Great. And then cue point recheck. And also, you know what? Well, let me finish what I'm doing here. Dot schedule. I don't know, 5 seconds, 5,000. And what I was about to say is here, let's just make sure that it's all canceled and all done. So cue point recheck dot cancel if it's already been scheduled. And that should be fine. Let's see if that worked. So now, well, first off, I'll just delete this cue point. But it still exists. Let me delete this one. So let's see. Okay, something's not working. Because it doesn't look like our update cue points is actually getting called. Which is definitely having to do with my error with the task. Oh, there it is. 5 seconds later, it did fire. I just wasn't waiting long enough because I was being impatient. But still, it's not, the menu is not correct. So let's try again. I'm going to print here and see, do we actually get that clear message? No. So let's print IDs here. Okay. So that seems correct. Right? Update cue points. But then this blocked it. I will also just post IDs 0. And I'm going to shorten this just while we're testing to 50 milliseconds. Oh, there's this 0 in the beginning. Why? I don't know. Maybe because that's the, oh, that's the, it's this. Okay. So what we want to do then is say, let's do this. If IDs 0 is equal to 0, then IDs equals IDs.slice1. So we'll get rid of that, and then we'll proceed with the next. Yay. Okay. So now, if I go back to live and I say silent room, is the menu correct? Is it because I didn't have my observer? Okay, let's try again. Oh, but my thing was short because I did that for testing. Back to 5,000. Init. Delete. Interesting. But it looks correct, so I don't know where these errors came from. But we're going to ignore that and press on here. Silent room. There we go. And then what if I delete silent room again? Okay, that seemed to work. So let's now do the thing about the playing when we jump. So we'll say live.text. We'll call this jump or play on jump. And for this, we're going to use this cool feature they recently added, which is called set attribute. So we'll create a variable with the var key. We'll have this disabled by default. And then we say declare attribute play on jump. And then this allows JavaScript to recognize this as a, the V8 codebox object recognizes this as an attribute of itself. And so I can send this message and update that property. And then down here, we can say if play on jump, then we want to play, which I believe is the start playing method of the song class. Start playing, yeah. So, and we already have the song class because of the cue point observer. So we'll say cue point observer dot call is playing, and or not is playing, start playing. And also we don't want to start it if it's already playing. So we'll say cue point observer dot get is playing is equal to 0. So if it's not playing and play on jump is enabled, then play. So let's test that. So we're not playing currently. I'm going to enable this and I'm going to go to MapHive. We jumped, but we did not play. Do we get any errors? No. Oh, wait. I put this in the wrong place. How silly. It should be inside of jump, not inside of the cue point scanner. There we go. There we go. So this menu should update. Yes, and then we can select that. All right. Let's try to make this look a little more lively. So I'm going to go to background color. We have to use uMenu. We can't use live.menu because you can't dynamically update the contents of a live.menu, unfortunately. So I'm just going to do the best I can here with Ableton Sans 9.5. Looks a little more Ableton-y. I know that, like, yeah, there's been some creative solutions out there for solving this problem. Fours does this thing with like these headers where the U menu is kind of hidden. You wouldn't know that it's a U menu, but it is. In the like modulation section of what's it called? Opal. Cool. And actually, it's pretty smart. It waits until the grid line, so it kind of follows the quantization rules of live. Nice. Okay. I think that's everything for this. I'm curious. Hopefully this, I mean, I feel like this is the bare bones functionality. Like if you were an artist who, just needed to be able to quickly like all you were doing in live was just quickly making sure you go to the right track, and you wanted something that was a little bit easier than having to like scrub along the timeline here, then like this would be pretty good, right? You could always just if everything stopped, you can just jump to that point, and then whenever you're ready to start, you can hit the space bar or hit it on your push or whatever. I'm sure we could also find a way to do a push integration here as well as MIDI, so that you could just send a MIDI note in to trigger your cue points. I know that like some of these other more sophisticated solutions actually like automate a lot of this stuff for you, so you can like just tell it to like jump around the timeline automatically, which is obviously a lot more, and certainly those more expensive products, they're probably worth it, but not everybody needs those. So this is going to be a free device. Put the link down in the description below. If you have ideas about direction that this could go, I'm curious to hear them. And if you have any questions about the programming part, of course, ask away.